You didn't cause problems. You didn't ask for much. You didn't cry too loudly, laugh too freely, or take up too much space. And somewhere along the way, you learned something devastatingly subtle. Being unseen was safer than being rejected. You learned how to disappear in plain sight, not because you were shy, not because you lacked confidence, but because attention felt unpredictable, conditional, dangerous. You learned to read the room before you entered it. You learned to sense moods like weather patterns. You learned that your needs were inconvenient and your emotions optional. So you became easy, low maintenance, self-sufficient, invisible. And that invisibility saved you. It kept you from being scolded, from being dismissed, from being emotionally abandoned all over again. But here is the paradox, the one that follows you into adulthood. The strategy that kept you safe as a child is now the reason you feel empty, unseen, and disconnected as an adult. You don't know how to ask. You don't know how to rest. You don't know how to take up space without guilt. And worst of all, you don't know if anyone would stay if you did. This is not a weakness. This is the psychology of a child who learned to survive by erasing themselves. In psychology, invisibility is not an absence of identity. It is an adaptive identity. When a child grows up with emotional neglect, the nervous system receives a very specific message. Your inner world is not important enough to be responded to. Not punished, not attacked, simply ignored. And neglect is uniquely damaging because it leaves no visible scars. There is no moment to point to, no explosion, no villain, just absence. From this absence, the child develops hypervigilance, a state where the nervous system is constantly scanning for emotional cues. The child becomes exquisitely sensitive to others while remaining disconnected from themselves. Then comes self-erasure, a coping mechanism where the child minimizes their presence to maintain relational safety. Psychologist Donald Winnicott described this as the development of the false self, a version of the child that exists solely to meet external expectations, while the true self retreats into hiding. Neurologically, this shapes the brain. The default mode network, responsible for self-referential thought, becomes underdeveloped or distorted. Instead of asking, "What do I feel?" the brain asks, "What is expected of me?" Over time, this leads to insecure avoidant or disorganized attachment. Closeness feels overwhelming, needs feel dangerous, and dependence feels shameful. The child does not learn how to be seen, only how to be acceptable. Like a dimmer switch permanently turned down, the nervous system never learned that full brightness could be safe. The deepest pain of invisibility is not loneliness, it is the grief of unrealized existence. You grieve the version of yourself that never got to be loud, messy, needy, celebrated. Carl Jung once wrote, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent. But there is another burden, quieter, heavier, the unlived life of the child themselves. When you grow up invisible, authenticity becomes a threat. You don't ask for what you want, you negotiate with yourself until the wanting disappears. You don't express pain, you intellectualize it. You don't feel anger, you redirect it inward. The core fear is simple and devastating. If I am fully myself, I will be left. So even joy becomes complicated. Rest feels unsafe. Being cared for feels suspicious. You become the observer of your own life, present but never centered. You belong everywhere and nowhere. This is the invisible grief no one sees. Not the pain of being hated, but the pain of never being known. These patterns do not disappear with age. They mature. They become socially acceptable. They become praised. You might recognize them. 1. In relationships. You become the one who listens endlessly but struggles to share. You attract emotionally unavailable partners because emotional distance feels familiar. You fear being too much, so you become not enough. 2. At work, you overfunction. You anticipate needs before they're voiced. You burn out quietly because asking for help feels like failure. 3. With boundaries, you don't set them, you endure. You don't say no, you disappear. Resentment builds, but you blame yourself for feeling it. 4. Internally, you struggle to identify what you want. Decisions feel overwhelming. You feel disconnected from your body, from hunger, fatigue, and desire. 5. With rest, stillness feels unsafe. Busyness becomes proof of worth. Silence brings unease instead of peace. 6. With identity, you adapt so often that you don't know who you are without context, without service, without usefulness. And here is the most important reframe. These are not personality traits. They are coping strategies. The beginning of healing is not fixing, it is witnessing. Seeing the pattern without shaming it. Naming the survival intelligence in it, and gently asking, what did this protect me from? Healing invisibility does not begin with becoming louder. It begins with becoming present. The work is subtle, brave, revolutionary. It looks like inner child reparenting, offering yourself the attunement you never received. It looks like shadow work, reclaiming the parts of you that learned to hide. It looks like choosing softness where rigidity once lived. You practice saying small truths. You practice taking up small spaces. You practice resting without justification. And slowly, the nervous system learns something new. Visibility does not equal danger. The goal is not to perform with confidence, it is to cultivate safety. As philosopher Soren Kierkegaard wrote, to dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself. You were never broken. You were adaptive, brilliant, surviving, and now you are allowed to become whole, not by disappearing less for others, but by appearing fully for yourself. If this resonated, share it with someone who learned to survive quietly. Subscribe not because you are lost, but because you are remembering who you are. You were never invisible. You were unseen, and that can change.